Most landlords are terrified to raise rents, but the real danger is not raising them at all. And I get it, rent increases can feel risky, but after working firsthand with hundreds of tenants over the years, I've noticed what I did that made the process successful and what was less effective. Welcome to Strategy Saturday. I'm Charles Carillo, and today's episode, we're discussing how to raise rents without losing your tenants. If you've ever bought a building with under market rents or hesitated to increase rent during inflationary times, this episode's for you, so let's get started. One of the most challenging aspects of being a landlord is raising rent. Minor rent increases of just 1% to 3%, maybe even up to 5%, aren't that difficult to achieve since most tenants expect their rent to increase similar to their other expenses every year. Now, where this gets tricky is when you have a property or unit that has severely under market rents. This commonly occurs when you purchase a property from a mom and pop landlord that has owned it for 10 to 15 plus years. They have little to no mortgage on the property and cash flow with minimal issues, and they don't want to disturb that. They don't want additional hassles involved with renovating and finding new tenants either. Now, one piece of advice I received from my father years back was that before requesting rent increases, make sure to address all deferred maintenance. If tenants see you and your team at your property fixing and improving it, they're more likely to agree to your rent increase. I know that I am not agreeing to a rent increase as a tenant if issues have not been addressed at the property I am renting. Now, one piece of advice I received from one of my first property managers was always to raise rents every year, even if it's only 1% to 2%. And there are two main reasons for this. Firstly, by raising rents by just 1 additional percent annually, you dramatically increase your property's returns and your property's values. Secondly, it helps ensure you will not get behind inflation. Many small landlords were not raising rents in the run-up to COVID, only to find out in 2021 and 2022 that inflation was now turning their positive cash flowing asset into a negative cash flowing property. And these landlords were now faced with the truth that they need to raise rents by 20% or more to begin to cover the dramatic increases in expenses. So raise rents each year, no matter how minimal it is. If you're raising rents 10% or more, I would suggest a more strategic approach to increasing your tenant's rent. I would only undertake all this work if you genuinely want to retain the tenant. For less than ideal tenants, I might not go through all the legwork. Additionally, I am willing to keep great tenants and not achieve full market rate rents. My goal in this process is to keep rents close to market, but also to retain the tenant. First, gather several actual rent comparables. Don't just get one comparable and present that as what the market is. Find actual comparables in your neighborhood for properties in similar condition and of similar vintage. Now, if you're renting a unit for $1,000 and one neighbor is trying to rent the unit for $1,800 and you bring that to your tenant, but they look online, they find many units for $1,400 out there, it now looks like you're trying to take advantage of the situation. Secondly, compile these rental listings, and I would put together a letter to the tenant at least 60 days before renewal. Yes, I would send a letter for a significant increase with all the documentation and printouts so they can review it when they are free, and send it out at least 60 days in advance, especially if you just bought a property, because the tenants in the back of their mind, they're thinking after you've purchased it, what's going to happen with my rent when that renewal happens. So no more surprises, send it out to them, tell them what you're thinking, tell them what the market is. And if you've been doing work on the property before that, then you can show that to them. Explain that over the past 4 years, for example, you've kept the rent under market while expenses have increased. And now you're required to increase the rent from say $1,000 to $1,300, which is still $100 on the market. I would also include any local articles on the cost of the property ownership increasing in their community because they probably don't follow it if they're tenants, unless they're trying to buy a property. Maybe taxes and water have increased. Send them these articles. Make sure they're local articles. Don't send them an article from USA Today, but how they can fully understand why you're raising their rent. And the cost is not to achieve full market rent. If you can, that's great, but to really offset the rising cost and get yourself as close to market as possible while retaining that tenant. Now, a couple of different markets offer to fix or replace something for the tenant. Perhaps they have an old stove that requires repairs. You could offer to replace that stove if they renew. Have they mentioned anything else that might be outdated or could be addressed or was starting to show signs of wear or issues? How are the common areas? Maybe there is an issue that no one has complained about but needs repair. Remember that making updates and raising rents is a win-win for tenants and landlord. Any repair you make also increases the value of your property. Now, one additional strategy for structuring the rent increase is by raising rent to market and then offering a 1-year rent discount if they renew. So pretty much you're giving them almost like a concession on a renewal. But for example, you raise rents fully to market rate in this example, say $1,400, but offer a $100 to $150 rent concession for the first year. Now, you've now achieved market rents on paper, and you know that if they renew next year, the concession will burn off and you'll be receiving full market rent from there on. So pretty much you've done two things. You've raised rents for this year, and now you've already set for raising rents for next year as well. Now, for more information on how to raise rents, check out episode SS39. That's episode SS39. Now, one additional point to make is how expensive the cost of tenant turnover has become. And this is why we're not pushing for full market rentals all the time. We're really just trying to close that gap. Even minor rental turns can cost $5,000 these days. We're seeing it as well, over $5,000 for between lost rents and everything else, with major unit turns costing multiples of that. That is why the goal is always to try to keep good tenants, even with slightly below market rents. If you purchase a property with low rents, you need to address deferred maintenance and then start rental increases immediately. The longer you avoid it, the harder it will be. Always understand your state and local tenant laws. And let's also remember that you are not negotiating the sale of an old used car, but negotiating a rent increase on someone's home. And this is always a very personal and emotional matter. So state the facts, present your offer, consider feedback, and remain compassionate. Also, give them enough time. So if you have 60 days that they have to tell you to leave, tell them 90, 120 days out. This way they have time if they want to find a new property, but then you also have time to work with them. They don't have like a weekend. If you drop it on their, you send it to them and they have a weekend to make the decision. Now they have time to speak with their other roommates, their spouse, whatever it might be, and they can figure out what they want to do. And they might call you back and say, hey, this is a little too high. Can you do something lower, whatever it might be? And you can make that decision as you want, but I'd rather have them speaking to you before they start pulling up Zillow and start looking for another apartment. So I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to rate, review, subscribe, submit comments and potential show topics at globalinvestorspodcast.com. If you're interested in actively investing in real estate, please check out our courses and mentoring programs at syndicationsuperstars.com. That is syndicationsuperstars.com. Look forward to 2 more episodes next week. See you then. If you always want to invest in real estate, but didn't have the time, didn't know where to find the deals, couldn't get the funding, and didn't want tenants calling you? Since 2006, I've been buying income-producing properties in great locations that provide us with consistent passive income while we wait for appreciation in the future and take advantage of tax laws while we're waiting. And unlike your financial advisor, we invest alongside our investors in every property we purchase. Check out investwithharborside.com. If you like the idea of investing in real estate, if you like the idea of passive income, partner with us at investwithharborside.com. That's investwithharborside.com.
This episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this podcast are limited to accredited investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure, subscription documentation, and are subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Syndication Superstars, LLC exclusively.